The hall shook with a roar that seemed to come from the very heart of the planet. The Dragon Emperor, a massive creature with scales like molten metal, paced in his chamber. Every handler who had come before him had failed. Some fled in terror, others were thrown aside like toys, and a few never left at all. The galaxy knew him as a monster, but deep inside the Emperor was lonely. No one had ever truly reached him. Clyra, the newest handler, stepped cautiously into the chamber. She was an alien, tall and thin, with eyes that had seen wars and worlds crumble. She held the ceremonial crystal staff that would help her bond with the dragon, her hands trembling slightly. She had trained for this moment her entire life, but standing before the Emperor, fear gnawed at her. The Emperor's golden eyes opened slowly. They glowed like molten fire, filled with suspicion and rage. He sniffed the air, his massive head tilting to one side. Clyra took a deep breath and began the ritual. She moved carefully, her voice calm as she recited the old words, meant to calm and guide the dragon. The Emperor let out a deafening roar. The walls shook and the windows rattled. Clyra's heart leaped into her throat as the dragon's tail lashed across the chamber, sending her flying into a pile of stone debris. Pain shot through her arm, but she forced herself to stand. She tried again, more cautiously this time, but the Emperor was not interested in calm words or careful gestures. He roared and flared his wings, a storm of power and anger. The Imperial Council, watching through the crystal observation panels, whispered in alarm. Every handler they sent had failed, but Clyra's failure seemed worse. The Emperor had never been so furious. He paced in a circle, snapping at the air, flames licking from his mouth. Clyra stumbled backward, unsure how to survive this moment. Then a quiet sound came from the hallway. A soft scrape of wood on stone. Everyone turned to see a small human boy pushing a cart filled with hay and water. He looked no older than 16, his face pale from working under the sun, his hands raw from chores. He froze at the sight of the massive dragon. The Emperor's eyes shifted toward the boy. For the first time the air changed. The golden gaze, usually full of rage, softened slightly, replaced with something like curiosity. No handler, no trained alien had ever caught his attention like this. The room seemed to hold its breath. The boy's name was Laron. He had been assigned to care for the dragon's stables, unaware of the danger inside. He had only come to do his job, bring food and water, clean the area, and make sure the dragon's living space was orderly. But standing before the Emperor, Laron felt fear rise in his chest. His legs shook, but he did not run. Slowly he stepped forward, holding out a piece of dried meat from his cart. He spoke softly, his voice trembling. I brought this for you, sir. I hope it is enough." The Emperor sniffed the meat, his massive nostrils flaring. He lowered his head slightly, tilting it closer to the boy. Laron froze, unsure if the dragon would strike. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Then, gently, the Emperor took the meat from Laron's hand. The boy's heart leapt, and the council gasped. No one had ever dared approach the Emperor like this. No one had ever offered him food without fear, without trying to control him. And yet, here he was, taking it from a small human boy. The dragon's golden eyes studied Laron, and something unspoken passed between them. A spark, tiny but real, had begun. Clyra struggled to comprehend what she was seeing. All her training, all her years of experience, could not have prepared her for this. The dragon's anger had vanished, replaced with a careful, wary curiosity. The boy's hands trembled, but he did not flinch. He took a step closer and offered a small bucket of water. The Emperor sniffed it and allowed him to pour it into a dish. The council could hardly believe their eyes. "Impossible," one of the advisors whispered. "He has never accepted anything from anyone but a chosen handler." The Emperor lowered his massive head further and allowed Laron to touch the scales near his neck. The boy's fingers brushed against the hot, hard surface, and the dragon did not pull away. Instead, he leaned slightly into the touch. For the first time in centuries, the Dragon Emperor had allowed a human to reach him without fear or anger. Laron's lips curled into a small, nervous smile. I think you might be lonely," he whispered, almost to himself. The Emperor's ears flicked, and he let out a low rumble, almost like a purr. No one had ever heard a sound like that from him. The council muttered among themselves. Every handler had failed, every alien had tried and been rejected. And now, a human boy, small, untrained, unimportant by all appearances, was standing before the Emperor, calm and fearless. The spark of something new, something no one had seen before, was beginning to grow. The Emperor's gaze remained on Laron. The boy did not step back. He held out another piece of dried meat, and the dragon accepted it without hesitation. Slowly, the massive creature lowered himself to the ground, a gesture no handler had ever seen. He was not bowing, not submitting, but he was allowing the boy near him. That was all it took. In that quiet, tense chamber, a new bond began to form. The Dragon Emperor, feared across the galaxy, had rejected every handler sent to him. But the small human boy without magic or power had found a way through. And that spark, fragile and untested, would change everything in the galaxy, if it could survive the dangers that were already closing in. The room was silent, save for the low rumble of the Emperor's breath. Laron looked up into the golden eyes that had struck fear into so many, and he did not turn away. He only smiled and held out a hand. And for the first time the Dragon Emperor did not roar. The spark had begun. Laron returned to the Emperor's chamber the next morning, carrying fresh hay and water. The guards and advisors whispered as he passed, warning him to be careful. But Laron only kept walking, his heart steady. The Dragon Emperor lay on the floor, massive wings folded, golden eyes open and watching him. The boy felt no fear this time. He set down the water bucket first, then scattered the hay. The Emperor sniffed each item carefully, then let out a low rumble like a greeting. Laron smiled. He stepped closer, brushing his hands over the dragon's scales near the neck. The Emperor leaned slightly into the touch, testing the boy's patience. 4 days, Laron came and went, doing his work and speaking softly to the dragon. He never shouted, never forced the Emperor to do anything. He only offered food, water, and gentle words. And slowly the Emperor responded. At first it was small gestures. The dragon would follow Laron's movements around the chamber, lower his massive head when the boy approached, or nudge the cart to help him move it. The other handlers watched from the observation panels, astonished. No human had ever come so close, and the Emperor seemed to like it. One evening, Laron decided to clean the Emperor's wings. They were huge, stretching across the chamber like sails, and dust had gathered in the folds. The boy climbed carefully onto a platform, holding a soft brush. The Emperor's wings twitched as Laron approached. For a moment the dragon stiffened, then relaxed under the boy's careful touch. He allowed Laron to run the brush along the long metallic scales without striking or roaring. "You're very strong," Laron whispered, "but you don't need to be afraid all the time. You can trust me." The Emperor tilted his massive head as if understanding the words. He made a soft rumbling sound, almost like a purr. Laron had never heard anything like it before, and he smiled. Clyra, the veteran handler, watched in disbelief. She whispered to one of the council members, "I have trained for decades. You would never allow this. No one could ever do what this boy is doing." Laron didn't hear them. He only focused on the dragon. Over time, the Emperor began to follow him from room to room. He would watch Laron clean, carry supplies, and tend to other animals in the stables. Sometimes he would mimic the boy's movements, lowering his head when Laron crouched, or curling his tail slightly when the boy moved around him. Other handlers tried to interact with the Emperor, but he would not respond. He only listened to Laron. The boy realized that he had become the dragon's chosen companion. It was not about power or skill. It was about patience, kindness, and understanding. One morning Laron led the Emperor outside the chamber. He guided him to the training yard, a large space with soft ground and obstacle structures. The boy climbed onto the dragon's back for the first time. The Emperor shifted slightly, testing the weight, then stood still, allowing Laron to settle. "Hold on tight," Laron whispered. He gently tugged on a loose strap that acted as reins, more to guide than control. The Emperor spread his wings and stepped forward. His movements were careful at first, then strong and steady. Laron held on, exhilarated. The wind rushed past them as the dragon moved, and for the first time the Emperor flew with a human on his back. From above, Laron pointed toward the targets they would practice on. The Emperor responded to his gestures, diving and turning with surprising agility. Each day their bond grew stronger. Laron taught him simple maneuvers, guiding him gently with hands and words, never forcing. The Emperor learned quickly, understanding the boy's intentions before they were even spoken. The council began to notice changes across the galaxy. Rumors spread that the Dragon Emperor, feared for centuries, was now responding to a human boy. Some laughed it off, thinking it was impossible. Others feared the implications. If a human could earn the trust of the Emperor, what else could humans do that no one else could? Inside the chamber, Laron sat beside the dragon one evening, brushing his scales and speaking softly. "You're not alone anymore," he said. The Emperor's eyes met his, golden and deep, full of something like gratitude. He nudged Laron gently, resting his massive head on the boy's shoulder. Laron smiled, feeling the warmth of trust and understanding. Over the next few weeks, the bond grew stronger. The Emperor allowed Laron to ride him in the training yard regularly. He listened to the boy's simple commands, lowered his massive wings to help Laron climb, and nudged objects when asked. Laron learned the dragon's moods, understanding when he wanted quiet or play, when he was restless or calm. For the first time in centuries, the Dragon Emperor was not feared everywhere he went. He had a companion who understood him, who was not trying to control or dominate him. Laron, the small human boy, had given the dragon something that no handler or alien could: friendship and trust. But their growing bond did not go unnoticed. In the palace, whispers grew louder. Aliens and council members could not understand why a human boy had succeeded where experienced handlers had failed. They worried, not for the Emperor but for the balance of power in the galaxy. If a human could reach him, what else could humans do? Laron ignored the whispers. He focused on the dragon, caring for him and speaking softly. And the Emperor, once lonely and feared, began to see the boy as more than a companion. He saw him as a friend. He allowed him near his most private spaces, shared his meals, and even began to playfully test the boy's courage. One afternoon, the Emperor rolled onto his back, nudging Laron to climb onto his chest. The boy laughed nervously, but he climbed, holding onto the thick scales. The dragon rolled gently from side to side, testing the boy's balance. When Laron laughed, the Emperor let out a low, happy rumble. No handler had ever made the dragon laugh before. And so, in the quiet chambers of the palace, the human boy and the Dragon Emperor became inseparable. Their bond was simple, built on trust and kindness. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. And though danger and challenges lay ahead, Laron and the Emperor were ready to face them together. For the first time, the Dragon Emperor had someone he could trust. And for the first time, the boy understood that sometimes the smallest actions, gentle words, careful hands, and courage, could create the strongest bonds. The sky over Zareth was darkening when the alarms rang. Red lights flashed across the palace walls and a deep, urgent siren shook the halls. Laron, carrying a bucket of water for the Dragon Emperor, froze. The Emperor's golden eyes widened, and he lifted his massive head, sniffing the air. Something was coming. Outside, the council's observation screens showed a fleet of alien ships approaching. They were sleek and black, bristling with weapons. These were mercenaries sent by a rival star empire. Their goal was simple: capture the Dragon Emperor and use his power to dominate the galaxy. The council panicked, sending guards to the gates and calling for the handlers to prepare. Laron did not hesitate. He ran toward the Emperor's chamber, shouting over the alarms. "We have to leave. Come on." The Dragon Emperor's wings unfurled with a deafening flap, knocking aside walls and furniture. Laron climbed onto his back, holding tightly to the straps he had fashioned. The Emperor shook his head, then rose to his full height, letting out a roar that echoed across the plains and into the approaching fleet. The first blasts of energy fire struck the palace walls. Stones exploded and sparks flew. Laron gritted his teeth. "Hold on," he shouted. The Emperor leapt into the air, dodging beams with surprising speed for a creature so massive. The boy leaned close, pointing toward a path through the canyon outside the palace. The Emperor banked sharply, turning with precision, and they were gone from the walls, flying toward the safety of open space. The mercenaries followed, sending wave after wave of attacks. Laron shouted directions, pointing where the beams were strongest. The Emperor twisted and dove, rolling through the sky like a living missile. He had never flown like this before, but he trusted Laron completely. Each movement was coordinated, each turn deliberate. The boy was small, but his mind worked faster than any weapon the aliens had. Below them, the palace guards struggled to hold back the mercenary troops. But no matter how many ships they destroyed, more kept coming. Laron knew they could not outrun the entire fleet forever. He focused on the Emperor, giving him clear instructions: climb, dive, and weave between the ships. The dragon responded instantly, reacting to the boy's gestures as if they were commands in his own mind. The fleet's leader, a towering alien with a spiked helmet, shouted orders through comms. "Capture him. No human weakling can tame such power." His ships fired concentrated energy blasts. One beam streaked toward them, hitting the Emperor's wing. He cried out, a deep, resonating sound, and twisted sharply, narrowly avoiding a second shot. Laron held on, fear gripping him, but he did not panic. "Steady. Use the canyon walls," he yelled. The Emperor angled toward the cliffs, weaving through the narrow passages. The ships could not follow so closely, and several crashed against the rocks. Laron's heart pounded with fear and excitement. He had never imagined flying like this, riding a creature so massive and so alive, dodging destruction at every turn. Yet, the Emperor's trust in him never wavered, and the dragon's confidence grew with each successful maneuver. Hours passed as they fought the fleet. The sun began to rise, casting light over the planet and illuminating the chaos below. The Emperor let out another roar, signaling a counterattack. He dove toward a group of smaller ships, snapping them aside with powerful tail swings and fire bursts. Laron leaned forward, guiding him carefully. Each move was precise, a blend of human strategy and draconic strength. Finally, the remaining ships retreated, unable to match the teamwork of boy and dragon. The sky cleared, leaving smoke and debris drifting across the plains. Laron slid from the Emperor's back, knees shaking but smiling. The dragon landed softly nearby, wings folding over him like a protective cloak. He lowered his head toward Laron, nudging him gently. The boy reached up, resting a hand on the golden scales. "You did it," Laron whispered, almost in disbelief. "We did it." The Emperor rumbled, a deep, vibrating sound of satisfaction. No handler or alien had ever been able to defend him like this, and now, a human boy had succeeded where countless others had failed. Back in the palace, the council was silent, staring at the screens. Clyra shook her head. I don't understand. No human could have done this." But the evidence was clear. Laron had coordinated, guided, and trusted the Emperor in a way no one else could. And the Emperor had followed, responding only to the boy. The victory did not bring relief. Laron knew the enemies would return, stronger and more cunning. He looked at the Emperor, golden eyes reflecting determination and understanding. "We have to be ready," he said softly. The dragon's rumble answered him, as if promising that together they could face whatever came next. The bond between them had become more than trust. It was partnership. The boy's courage, quick thinking and care had awakened something in the Emperor, and in turn, the dragon's strength and power had saved the boy and the palace. Across the galaxy, whispers began. A human had earned the loyalty of the Dragon Emperor, a feat thought impossible. Even as the stars brightened and the fleet disappeared, Laron and the Emperor stood ready. The danger was not gone, but together they had proven that humans, small and seemingly weak, could accomplish things no alien or weapon could achieve. And for the first time, the Dragon Emperor, feared for centuries, had someone he would follow, someone he could trust with his life. The galaxy had begun to see a truth no one had believed before. Courage, kindness, and intelligence were more powerful than fear and force. Laron climbed onto the Emperor's back again, this time without fear, and whispered, "We'll face them all together." The dragon lowered his massive wings, and they soared into the sky once more, ready to meet whatever threats the stars would send. The bond between human and dragon had been tested in fire and sky. They had survived, stronger together, and the galaxy would soon know that the smallest beings could change the fate of the universe. Laron led the Dragon Emperor back to the training yard the next morning. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in orange and gold. The palace guards watched from a distance, still amazed that a human boy had survived the mercenary attack and gained the dragon's trust. Laron carried a few simple tools, ropes, markers, and a wooden staff. He did not need weapons. What he needed was patience and understanding. "Okay," he said, stepping onto the ground beside the Emperor. "We need to practice. I'll show you some moves and you try them. Ready?" The dragon rumbled in response, leaning his massive head down so Laron could touch his nose. It was a small gesture, but it meant agreement. They began with simple maneuvers. Laron guided the Emperor through circles, climbs, and gentle dives. The dragon's wings flapped powerfully, sending gusts of wind through the yard. Laron held on tightly, shouting directions over the roar of the air. The Emperor moved with surprising speed and precision, learning to respond not just to gestures, but to Laron's voice. At first there were mistakes. The dragon overshot turns, scraped his tail against walls, and sometimes flopped awkwardly on the ground. Laron did not scold him. He laughed, adjusted, and guided the Emperor again. The bond between them made the learning possible. The dragon trusted the boy completely, and the boy knew how to calm him when he became restless. Each day Laron increased the difficulty. He added obstacles, narrow passages, and targets to approach or avoid. The Emperor learned to swoop over them, dodge sharply, and even land in small areas without breaking anything. The training was both play and work, a dance between human and dragon. One afternoon, Laron climbed onto the dragon's back for a special exercise. He had set markers on the ground and wanted the Emperor to weave between them without touching any. "Follow my hand, watch my body, listen to my voice," he instructed. The dragon tilted his head, eyes glowing, then began. He moved carefully, following Laron's guidance perfectly. When they finished, Laron jumped from his back and laughed. The Emperor rumbled softly, nudging him with a wing in a playful gesture. Other handlers tried to watch or help, but the Emperor ignored them completely. He had chosen Laron. No one else mattered. The council realized that the bond was extraordinary. A human boy had taught a creature centuries old to follow his guidance without fear or force. The galaxy had never seen such a thing. During their training, Laron also taught the Emperor smaller lessons: how to stay calm in the presence of enemies, how to land quietly, and how to protect others rather than attack blindly. The dragon was intelligent, but he had never learned patience. Laron's gentle teaching changed that. The Emperor began to anticipate moves, think before he acted, and even wait for Laron's direction in tense moments. One evening, Laron led the Emperor to the cliffs outside the palace. The view stretched over the valleys and plains below, sunlight glinting off rocks and rivers. "We'll practice aerial maneuvers today," Laron said. The dragon flapped his wings and lifted into the sky. Laron guided him through climbs, dives and rolls, each one sharper than the last. The wind whipped around them and the boy held on tightly, shouting commands. The Emperor responded to every gesture, every word, showing trust and understanding. The training was not just for strength. It was for coordination, trust, and thinking together. Laron discovered that the Emperor could anticipate his moves, and the dragon discovered that the boy's mind was clever and fast. Together they became more than master and creature. They became a team, capable of feats no one else could imagine. Over time, the Emperor began to playfully test Laron. He would suddenly drop a few meters, then rise again, seeing if the boy could stay balanced. He nudged objects, rolled gently, or flicked small rocks in the yard, watching how Laron responded. The boy laughed and adapted each time. These playful exercises strengthened their bond as much as the serious training. The council began to spread word across the galaxy. A human boy was training the Dragon Emperor, teaching him skills, guiding him through maneuvers, and forming a bond deeper than anyone had expected. Some were fearful. Some were amazed. All agreed that humans, small and seemingly weak, could achieve something no other species could. One morning, after months of training, Laron and the Emperor sat on a hill overlooking the palace. The boy ran his hand along the dragon's neck, feeling the heat of his scales. "You've learned a lot," he said softly. "But we're not finished. We'll keep getting better together." The Emperor lowered his head, nudging the boy in agreement. In the weeks that followed, the Emperor became faster, sharper, and more responsive. He could follow Laron's gestures from a distance, anticipate enemy movements, and land precisely on small platforms. The boy's simple methods, patience, and care had taught a creature feared across galaxies to trust and act with purpose. At night, Laron would sit near the dragon, feeding him, talking quietly, and planning the next day's exercises. The Emperor would lie close, his golden eyes half closed, listening. No other handlers could approach. No weapon or training could replace what the boy had created, a bond built on trust, kindness, and courage. By the end of the month, the training yard had become a place of wonder. The Emperor moved like a living shadow across the sky, agile and powerful. Laron guided him with words and gestures, small but effective. Together they had grown stronger, ready to face threats, and more than friends, they were partners, a team no one could defeat. The galaxy would soon see that humans were not weak. They could think, adapt, and create bonds that even the oldest, fiercest dragons could not resist. And the Dragon Emperor, once feared and alone, had chosen a human boy to be his companion, teacher, and guide. Laron looked at him, a smile on his face. "We're ready," he whispered. The Emperor rumbled low, a sound that meant agreement, promise, and strength. Together they were unstoppable. Years had passed since Laron first met the Dragon Emperor. The boy was no longer small and uncertain. He had grown into a confident young man, his hands still gentle but steady, his mind sharp. The Emperor had grown too, stronger and wiser, his golden scales gleaming under the twin suns of Zareth. Together they had become legends across the galaxy, their bond known and whispered in every star system. Planets once ruled by fear now spoke of courage. Laron and the Emperor had defended worlds from invaders, prevented wars between warring empires, and rescued entire colonies from disasters. The dragon followed only Laron, ignoring every handler, advisor, or soldier sent to command him. No force could sway the Emperor, because he had chosen the boy who had once fed him, spoken kindly to him, and earned his trust. One day, a messenger arrived from a distant system. The fleet of the rival empire, the same one that had once tried to capture the Emperor, had sent an offer of surrender. Laron read the message carefully, then looked at the dragon. "They know we're stronger than they imagined," he said. The Emperor rumbled in agreement, wings shifting as he turned to face the horizon. The people of Zareth gathered to witness the two heroes. Children stared wide-eyed at the dragon, some hiding behind parents, some daring to approach. Laron knelt beside the Emperor, allowing the smallest ones to touch his massive scales. The dragon lowered his head gently, careful not to frighten them, letting the humans feel the power and warmth of a creature that had once inspired fear. The council watched, still unsure how to feel. Laron had no title, no rank among them, and yet he commanded respect far beyond what any emperor or general had earned. The Emperor's obedience and trust elevated him to a position that no one could question. His actions had shown that humans could do what others could not: form bonds, inspire loyalty, and change the hearts of even the oldest and fiercest creatures. A delegation arrived from the neighboring systems, seeking counsel and alliance. Laron spoke on behalf of the Emperor, guiding diplomacy with words simple but wise. The dragon remained near him, massive wings folded, golden eyes alert. Together they showed the galaxy that strength was not just in power or weapons, it was in courage, understanding, and trust. During these events, Laron often reflected on the early days, when he had simply pushed a cart of hay into the Emperor's chamber. Back then he had been small, nervous, and unsure. Now he was the boy who had tamed the Dragon Emperor, a boy who had taught a creature feared across galaxies to trust and follow. He realized that the smallest actions could create the greatest changes. The Emperor too had changed. Once feared, isolated, and angry, he now roamed the skies with freedom, pride, and joy. He had discovered companionship, patience, and understanding through Laron. His roars were no longer warnings of death. They were declarations of protection, of friendship, and of triumph. He allowed no other handler near him because none could offer what the human boy had: loyalty born of trust and respect. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Laron climbed onto the Emperor's back. They soared together over the valleys, the wind rushing past, carrying the scents of flowers, water, and distant fires. Laron leaned close to the dragon's neck. "We've done well," he said quietly. The Emperor rumbled softly, a sound of agreement, comfort, and pride. Word of their deeds spread further, reaching systems that had never seen humans before. Aliens told tales of the boy who had tamed the Dragon Emperor. Stories spoke of his courage, his patience, and his ability to inspire a creature feared for centuries. Some doubted the truth at first, but no one could deny the evidence. The Emperor listened only to him, followed only him, and trusted only him. Enemies who once sought to capture or destroy the Emperor thought twice. They knew that the human boy and the dragon were more than a threat. They were unstoppable. Laron's small size, once thought a weakness, had become the galaxy's greatest advantage. His mind, courage, and understanding had created a force stronger than fleets or weapons. The Emperor nudged Laron gently with his massive head as they circled over Zaretha's capital. The boy laughed softly, running a hand along the dragon's golden scales. "I think they remember us now," he said. "They'll remember that humans can do what no one else can." The dragon rumbled again, and Laron felt the deep vibration travel through his body. It was a sound of promise and victory. Even the council acknowledged the truth. Laron's courage had rewritten what the galaxy thought possible. He had shown that humans, though small and fragile in appearance, could reach hearts no alien could touch. The Dragon Emperor had chosen him, and in doing so, had changed the balance of power, loyalty, and respect across the stars. As night fell, stars sparkled above, casting silver light across the palace and training grounds. Laron and the Emperor landed in the yard, side by side. The boy's eyes glimmered with determination. "We've done well, old friend. But there's still more to see, more to protect." The Emperor lowered his head, touching Laron's shoulder with his snout. It was a gesture of trust, respect, and partnership. In that moment, the galaxy understood that the Dragon Emperor had rejected every handler before, but he had found his match in a human. The smallest, simplest human could change the course of worlds, if he had courage, heart, and wisdom. And Laron, the boy who had once only wanted to feed and care for the dragon, had done more than anyone imagined. He had become a hero, remembered forever by the Empire, the dragon, and all who witnessed their bond. The Dragon Emperor, once alone and feared, now soared through the skies with his chosen companion. Together they defended worlds, inspired hope, and reminded the galaxy that true strength was not just in fire or scales, but in courage, kindness, and trust. The Empire, and the stars beyond, would always remember the human who tamed the Dragon Emperor. And Laron knew, as he rested his hand on the warm golden scales, that their story was only just beginning.